Electric vehicle sales jumped by 66% in the past year. But as the popularity of EVs grow, retailers should be thinking about how that might affect shopping patterns. So many EV brands are sold direct to consumer. So, what does this mean for your local auto dealer franchise? And what about charging stations? Are they going to change where and how I shop once I'm driving my electric vehicle? So, today we're talking about electric vehicles and retail real estate. You're watching Everything We Know About Retail. It's the show where we tell all of you everything we know about retail. We broadcast live on the internet most Thursdays at noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, but you can watch us anytime over on YouTube. You can get to us on YouTube by going to everythingweknow.show. And my name is James Cook. I'm coming to you live from Indiana.
And my name is Ebere Anokute, coming to you live from New York. We both research retail and real estate for JLL. And with that being said, let's not waste any time. James, tell me, what do you know about retail this week?
Okay, let's get right into it. We're going to be talking about three things that we know about electric vehicles. I know one thing is that EV sales grew by 66.4% in the past year because the cost of gas has been nutso. It's gone down somewhat now in the past month, but people are just looking at how much it costs to fill up their gas tank, and they're like, you know what? I think I'm going to get an EV so I can charge up in my garage at night.
I can't say I disagree with those people, honestly. I don't have
Yeah,
an
yeah.
EV myself yet, but I get the rationale. That makes sense why there's so much growth, but how does that compare to regular car sales?
Yeah, so it's huge growth because it's a small number. It's only a little over 5.5% of all auto sales are EVs. But that's really going to change. As an example, we just found out the Senate now has enough votes to pass this new huge climate and tax package. It's going to be overall $369 billion. And it includes a lot of things. But for today's conversation, what we're interested in is it has a 10-year tax credit where if you buy, and this isn't for everybody, this is buyers under a certain income threshold. But if you buy a new electric vehicle, you get a $7,500 tax credit. If you buy a used electric vehicle, you get a $4,000 tax credit. Everybody expects this is going to mean like the ramping up of production and sales of EVs in the US. And that is actually, you know what, on top of the infrastructure bill that put $5 billion to building a charging network. Because that's the other thing. Like, you might be excited about buying a car, but then you're like, well, what if I want to go on a road trip,
Right.
where I'm going to charge it? So that money is going to building out this nascent charging network.
I mean, wow, that's really exciting, and I definitely agree it's going to ramp up EV production. But at the end of the day, these electric vehicles are still just cars, right? So
Yeah.
why would any of this change the way or the model through which cars are sold? I don't really understand.
Yes. And that brings us to the first thing we know about electric vehicles.
Oh, thank
They
God.
are disrupting the dealer model.
Mm,
And we have one person, this all goes back to one person. You know who I'm talking about?
I wish I didn't. Just kidding.
Yeah, so we're talking about Elon. He really changed this model. So since 2019, Tesla has only sold cars online. Now they still have these showrooms. For a while they were like, maybe we'll close them, but they haven't. What you see here
Mhm,
is the showroom at Santa Monica Place.
mhm.
They got 200 showrooms and service centers. The showrooms are often in high streets or in Class A malls. They've got one in Miami's Design District. There's one in Santana Row. There's one in Meatpacking in New York. And Tesla has really proven that auto sales can thrive outside of the franchise dealership model, which is
Wow.
basically, until Tesla, the only way the cars were really sold. Um,
Right.
So they've really changed things. So it's not like, it's funny. It's not like because you sell EV, you have to sell direct to consumer. It's just that Tesla was like, oh, we can be really successful at this. And now others are kind of jumping onto the bandwagon and trying to follow suit. So now we've got a number of new ones out here. I'm curious, are you aware of VinFast, which is one of the newest?
I'm not, James. This is the first I'm hearing about FinFast, so please get me up to speed.
Well, VinFast just all of a sudden shot on my radar because they opened 6 locations
Okay.
in California. So
Okay.
most of the EV car dealers are doing it in California.
Right.
There are, economic sense. Gas is super expensive. They have an EV network in California that's really robust, unlike other states. But VinFast is a Vietnamese EV brand that says they want to eventually open up 30 locations in California, but they are they're all going to the same places. They're in Santa Monica Place, which we just saw the Tesla there.
Right.
someday, some of these malls are just going to be EV showrooms, right?
James, we call that co-tenancy.
Yeah. You got to watch out though. I mean, there's so many different brands. They're at Westfield UTC in San
Yeah.
Diego, the Village in Corte Madera, which I think there's also a Tesla there. I might be wrong about that, but anyway, yeah, these dealers, especially the high end luxury EV dealers, they're all going to the same places. We talked about another one. We talked about Taylor was talking about a couple episodes ago was the Rivian hub in Venice. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah, definitely heard of Rivian. I'm pretty sure they have a location in New York as well.
Well, they have right now, they've got, I think they have their eyes on opening new locations, but the only one that's open
Really?
is this one in Venice. And it's just around the corner from Abbot Kinney, which is like hipster shopping USA.
Right.
But it is not just a showroom. It is a public gathering space. They've got a coffee bar. They've got meeting spaces. They've got an outdoor garden. And yes, they also do have their cars on display. They sell an electric pickup and an electric SUV. But I mean, they're selling, as you can tell, they're selling a lifestyle
Clearly.
here.
Yeah.
This is a lot more, than just a place where you go and see a car. It's a place where you sort of embrace this whole outdoorsy eco tourist
I was
lifestyle, I
gonna say
guess.
environmentally conscious,
Right.
the garden, the outdoors. I'm getting that vibe from it, and definitely makes me want to buy an electric vehicle. So maybe
I know,
they're on,
right?
maybe they're on.
Would you ever get like a pickup or like one of those like off-roader SUVs? Is that your style at all?
I'm not much of an off-roader personally. I keep it, on the predetermined lanes.
Yeah, me too.
But but I've driven a pickup before, and there is something to be said about the height you like off the ground that you're just sitting on relative to
Yeah.
my own Honda Accord, which is very low to the ground. There's something about that I did enjoy, but not a pickup person myself.
Yeah, me neither. And it's funny, like I live out in the country, but I still probably wouldn't get a pickup. And I love people who are like live in the suburbs or in the city that have a pickup. I'm like, why?
Right. What are you doing that for?
Okay. There's more to talk about. There's Lucid. They do luxury EV sedans.
Okay.
They've got 21 Lucid studios in the US. They have these VR simulators. So because you can't do a test drive in the mall, they're like, oh, the second best thing is you can sit down and it's like you put on VR goggles and you sit down in a car like structure and then you feel like you're driving the Lucid car, which
Oh,
I
wow.
think is awesome.
That is cool. And Lucid has a location in New York. I think that's who I was thinking of when I said
Yeah.
Rivian. Yeah, Lucid as well.
Yeah. And they're in where are they? They're in Meatpacking in New
Mhm.
York. I mean, we're just going to keep saying the same places over and over again, pretty
Right.
much. They're in they're in Yorkdale and Toronto, with just all A malls. They're in Seaport in Boston. They're at Fashion Island, and they're at University Village in Seattle. So anyway, One other one is Fisker. They're another luxury EV brand, and they announced they have leased space at the Grove in LA. So, sort of the premier LA Class A lifestyle center. So, there's a real common theme here.
There is a theme, and I guess it makes sense to me for them to go where they believe their consumer is. But does that mean that all electric vehicle cars or sales will happen in Class A malls or high streets? Like, do they have any intention on, going to any other sort of retail property type? Or
And I'm going to answer that question, but first I want to answer another question. LinkedIn user asks, "Is this pre-recorded?" No, we are live on the internet, baby. So I just want to answer that, and also hi from Taylor.
Hello, Tay.
Taylor, we're reusing your Rivian content.
Wasn't expecting that. Hi, Taylor.
And Wayland says they're joining multi-family apartment buildings, and I don't know where here is, but I definitely saw one in Portland, Oregon, that was first floor retail that was an electric showroom, and that makes a lot of sense.
It makes perfect sense, honestly.
Okay, so to answer your question, is it only high streets and Class A malls? Nope. It totally depends on the brand. The luxury has been the sector that's really seen the most growth in EV just because it's expensive. But, we've got other brands coming. One, which is sort of luxury, is Polestar. They're like a performance brand. They're a Swedish brand that was owned by Volvo. Their model is similar to Tesla in that you buy it online only. When you go to the showroom, you're just looking at it. There's not a commissioned salesperson. But Polestar is partnering with established auto dealers. And I think this makes a lot of sense because you can just open up in markets real fast. You partner with the South Florida auto dealer, and suddenly, you've got Polestar showrooms, in all their dealerships. Often they are Volvo franchisees. I don't think they all are, but because of that history with Volvo, I was kind of Googling around and looking, they've got 22 locations, and I'd zoom in on the map and see, oh, this is part of a Volvo dealership. They're kind of separate, but you can see it's part of the auto campus.
Right. No, I mean, that makes sense to me because I would think that these traditional automakers would be maybe the first ones to jump on the EV wave because they have the infrastructure for creating cars in general. So, I mean, you mentioned earlier that electric vehicles only make up around 6% of overall car sales. So what about the traditional American car makers? What are they up to? How do they feel about all this?
Yeah, well, they see the future and are like, we got to change, or we're really worried we're going to get disrupted. So GM has been super aggressive. They said they're going to go all electric by 2035, which
it's aggressive.
That's like 13 years. 13 years to go all electric.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Ford is a little bit more a little less aggressive. So they say that 20 to 30% of their cars are going to be EVs globally by 2030. But they've done some cool stuff. So we're kind of talking about pickups, and if you want to be successful with an EV, you got to get out of luxury because that's a small segment.
Sure.
And pickups are super popular. They have an electric Ford F-150 that has been so popular they've sold out.
Wow.
So that's kind of like the next thing. And like I mentioned, I live out here in the country, and I've not seen any electric Ford F-150s. But I can totally see some of these farmers who aren't driving long distances. It's just around, they have farmland that's just miles around here. So electric car is great. And then you're not paying for gas.
Absolutely. I can see why it would make sense. I can't say I'm not surprised to hear that the electric F-150 has sold out. I just think of those as different consumer bases, maybe.
Yeah.
The electric vehicle consumer base and then the F-150 consumer base. So very interesting.
It's awesome. And it means that there is a real opportunity to break out of this, I don't know, like stereotypical, like that Rivian video that we saw.
Right. Right.
to get the EV into more than that. So Ford, their CEO said in an interview, and this was a little shocking to me, was that when they sell their plan is when they sell EVs, they're going to sell them online only. And this is the Tesla model. You go to the dealership to look at it, but they don't carry inventory. So you place your order online, and then you go to the dealership for service. And so,
Wow.
you're not going to see, I guess, you're not going to see these vast acres of parking lots full of cars at your local auto dealer.
I mean, so does that mean that we're seeing the end of the franchise auto dealer if they're going to be moving to selling online? Is e-commerce disrupting another industry?
Well, if it were any other industry, I would say yes, but auto
Okay.
dealers have a little extra protection. Did
Okay.
you know that direct to consumer sales of cars are illegal in most American states?
Illegal.
Yes. Isn't that insane?
That's feels targeted. I feel
Yeah,
like
well,
that language wouldn't have been there in whatever the initial, laws of these states were.
Well, and I don't exactly know how it came about. I probably should have dug into this, but at
Right.
some point, lobbyists from auto dealers put these laws into place to protect their territory,
Yeah.
so that when you buy Ford, you're not buying it directly from Ford. You're buying it from like I don't even know, but it's usually some dude's name, like Jim Smith's
Mhm.
Ford, and they usually have a couple of different ones, like it's like Volvo. I don't even know. I don't know what I'm talking about, but anyway, um, so the lobbies are going to fight any change, even if consumers want direct to consumer.
Right.
But it's like their argument, the auto industry's argument, the dealer's argument is that um, dealerships are like, because you have auto dealers, it means you have locally owned sales and service centers in every town, across America, which is true. Like
Mhm.
if you buy a Tesla, where I live, like the service center, I honestly don't even know. You could be going 100 miles, for a
Wow.
service, or like if you buy a Rivian, their service centers,
Yeah.
you probably have one somewhere in Illinois, and then they have what the model is with like Tesla is like, if it's certain things, they'll send somebody to your home to work on
Mm.
the car. But even then, I love, I drive um, I should say I drive a Chevy Volt, which is a electric car with a backup gas engine. They
Oh, wow.
don't they don't make it anymore, but it's awesome. And our dealership is like right down the road. And I live
Oh,
out in the boonies, dealership. Like, well, I say down the road. For me, it's down the road. It's like 15 minutes away.
right.
Um, all right. So I've been tangenting for a minute here. I just would say that Polestar model, that's going to be the easiest way to roll out a new EV brand or car, is to either partner with existing dealers or
Definitely.
yeah. So if you buy, I think that in the future, even though Ford is saying we're going to mimic the direct to consumer model, really, when you buy it online from Ford, the dealers are going to get a cut of that. So they're
Right.
still going to get a part of that profit. Okay, so we talked a lot about new locations that are opening up. We know that it's going to be exploding over the next 10 years with this new funding that's coming from the government for EVs. So Ebere, what am I going to buy? I'll buy a Rivian.
Okay.
Uh, no. I'm going to buy a VinFast, because that's the
Okay.
one I've learned about most recently. And I'm going to buy it at a mall showroom, or I'm going to look at it at a mall showroom and then buy it online. The next time I go to the mall, am I going to be able to charge my car at that mall?
Well, James, in Indiana, I'm not sure. But if you are in California, we can talk about the second thing that we know about retail, which is electric vehicle charging stations coming to Westfield malls, which is super exciting, right? So again, Indiana, I'd have to get back to you on that. I'm gonna dig into that a little bit further. But thanks to Electrify America, right, which is an electric vehicle charging station network that currently operates more than 730 charging locations and nearly 2,500 individual charging units across the United States. They have partnered with Westfield to open one of their largest charging stations ever at Westfield Valley Fair, which is a mall in Santa Clara, California. Have you been there, James?
I've not been to that one. I've been to, so that's right near San Jose. So that's like heavy
Hmm.
duty Silicon Valley. So
Hmm.
um, the Santana Row, which is, I believe, right across the street, I've been to that.
Okay, right. Anytime I hear mall, I'm just like, James, you been there? And I feel like you're like 9 out of 10 times, you're like, yep, I've walked there before. So just had to check there. But again, you're right. The location in Santa Clara, right next to Silicon Valley, it makes perfect sense as far as like access to a large EV customer base. And so this new location is going to feature 14 ultra fast chargers of various power levels. I won't get into the specifics because I don't know what gigahertz and kilowatts and all that stuff. But depending on whatever your car needs, I'm sure that this station is going to have it. And they
Uh-huh.
also feature this really interesting and cool solar canopy technology, wherein they have solar panels that are installed that will obviously conserve energy from the sun, and then they can feed that energy into a battery energy storage system that can either
Nice.
store the power when electricity is low, and or power the chargers when they have peak times and peak people coming through. So it seems like this new station is sort of at the nexus of all of the like environmental sort of advents that we need to be focusing on going forward. So definitely encouraging to see that, and hopefully it'll be a sort of trend going forward.
I love it. So it's at the mall. Is there cool stuff that connects it to the mall? Do I get like, I don't know, like a discount at the mall for charging there?
I mean, maybe we don't know who's listening. Maybe somebody listening is gonna take that idea and run with it. But for now, the coolest connectivity that they offer between the charging stations and the mall is that EV drivers will actually be able to order meals from restaurants inside the mall that are going to get delivered to their cars while they're charging, right? Which I think is brilliant because I'm pretty sure, I don't know, James. Well, you said your car's electric. How long does it take you to charge it from like empty to full?
So mine is not a good example because mine is an
Okay.
older. So mine uses what's called a level 2 charger.
Okay.
It takes a few hours. A level
Mm.
3 charger,
Mhm.
they say can get up to 80% charged in 30 minutes.
Right, right,
So
yeah, yeah. I've only driven a Tesla once, and I remember it taking maybe about an hour or so to charge up like that. So I think that this is great. It honestly sounds like you're going to be receiving the meal and eating it before you're ready to go away. But I think that's a great way, great amenity for this location, and it's currently not available at any other Westfield locations, but it will be in the future. Because the coolest part about all this is that this is the beginning of a very lengthy partnership between Electrify America and Westfield. So they've since announced plans to open 17 new charging stations at 17 Westfield locations across 7 U.S. states by the end of this year. All right.
wow.
That's explosive growth, I think. And I think it obviously speaks to the rapid growth in the EV industry, right? When car sales are up 66%, I fully understand why the charging stations need to work to meet that demand, because we can't have these cars stop in the middle of the road, James. That's not an option, right? We got
Hey,
to get
did
these
you?
charged.
I didn't know. Did we look at a photo of the charging
We
station?
absolutely did, James. Thank you for reminding me. So I got it right here.
Okay, look at
So
that.
here, I believe this is probably a rendering. I don't think the station itself is open just yet, but this is what it's going to look like. So obviously we can see the charging and these solar canopies right here, which are as aesthetically pleasing as they are functional, right? So
Hmm.
this is really the way of the future, I think, that this sort of stuff. And here we have another slide just showing another angle of again, look at that.
Fancy.
Looks like an electric Ford F-150, James.
Yeah. Speak of the
An
devil.
electric pickup truck right here in the flesh, getting charged up. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I honestly wonder how long it would take to charge a car that big. It must take like 2 hours or something, like
No,
something like
man, these new level 3 chargers are supposed to be awesome, like really
really.
fast. The
Wow.
problem is they're tough to find. There's not a ton of them out there
Ah,
yet.
okay. That's interesting. I've only really recently started to even see, or maybe they've been around for a while, but I'm just trying to notice charging stations, every so often, right? So the place
Hmm.
where I park my car when I get on the train and come into the office, they have maybe 6 to 8 electric vehicle charging stations there, and I'm just like, wow, we're the pace at which we're evolving and moving in that direction is definitely I don't know, hard to keep up with and kind of surprising, but ultimately good,
Mhm.
So, I mean, James, I'm curious, do you think that these new charging stations at shopping centers, right? Because we're starting with Westfield, but I'm sure that once, Simon sees how well it's working, we're going to get them over there or,
Mhm.
Brookfield or someone else. So, do you think that this is going to change how we shop, having these charging stations at these centers?
Uh, I think it could, and that actually leads us to the third thing that we know about, well, EVs. Is usually it's the third thing we know about retail today. It's all about EVs.
Right.
I think it's going to change shopping patterns. I do. I think there's a lot of potential disruption here, and we just don't quite know exactly how it's going to roll out. But we talked about the disruption of the dealership model,
Hmm.
or the change in the dealership model. The other one is gas stations, convenience stores,
Right.
big box retail. If you can charge your car up at home at night, which is what I do, I don't I don't get gas unless I go traveling. I don't get gas or charge up around town because I have enough charge in my car, you
Hmm.
know, to be around town.
Nice on that.
So that cuts down on a lot of trips to the gas station, and gas stations with convenience stores. 59% of their revenue is to just regular gas.
Wow.
Now, I should say they don't make a ton of profit on selling gas. The profit margins are really thin, but the gas is what gets people to go to the gas station,
Of course.
and then they make the profit on uh, beef jerky or
Right.
monster drinks. Or what's your road food of choice from a gas station?
Well, James, I have a disastrous sweet tooth, so it's probably going to be some lifesavers. They have some like blended. I'm too familiar. I know exactly the package I'm thinking of, but it's like a fusion sort of flavor that they have that I just can't resist whenever I walk past. What about you? What's your snack of choice?
Total, like if I'm on the road and I stop at a gas station, it's the worst. It's the hot dogs on the rollers.
Oh wow, James.
Get those
I
out,
mean,
slap. I put a line of just one line of mustard on there. It's the perfect road snack for me.
right? Well said, James. The most Midwestern thing I've ever heard. I love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna pair that with a Diet Coke.
There you go.
Sometimes chips, sometimes a Reese's peanut butter cup.
Okay. Okay.
So interesting statistic, 89% of EV drivers, when they charge up at a retail location, they make a purchase. So that's almost 90% of people. If they charge up, if you have a charger at your store, they're going to buy something there.
Yeah.
So that is a huge reason, why Westfield, for example, is saying, hey, we want to put chargers here because it's going to promote
Right.
purchases. But what people don't talk about and realize is how expensive it is to put in chargers. So I mentioned this
Wow.
like level 3 charger, which is going to be very soon the de facto standard. Like I have an older EV battery, slow to charge. It takes a couple of hours. That is not practical.
Right.
If I can charge in 30 minutes, it's awesome. So in order to put in one charger of a level 3 charger, it's $40 to $50,000. And that's one plug. And how
Wow.
many in our example, do you remember how many at that Westfield mall did they have?
They said that they're going to have 14.
Okay. That's a lot of money.
A lot of money.
I I wouldn't be surprised if there was some infrastructure bill spending that went to that, some
Subsidize it.
federal funding that went towards that, because that's really expensive, and you've got to sell a lot of stuff to make that money back.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so
Even with that sort of really high conversion, right? Like 90% of people making a purchase, it's still going to be, that's a lot of,
yeah,
lifesavers you got to sell in order to justify the cost of a single charge port. So I mean, that makes me wonder, like, will any individual retailers themselves be adding charging stations? Like, obviously, we see the malls are going in that direction. Are there any retailers that are doing the same thing that you've heard of?
yeah. So there's a few that have done pilot programs, and a lot of them are using using funding from the infrastructure bill, like Buc-ee's, which is a gas station we've talked about, I know has applied for infrastructure funding.
Right.
The biggest one is Pilot, which does the Pilot and the Flying J roadside stations, which I'm sure if you've been on a road trip, you've been to one of those. They're going to do 2,000 fast chargers at 500 locations.
Wow.
That's the biggest one that I've seen. Starbucks is doing one where between Denver and Seattle, they're going to put a charger every 500 miles at a Starbucks.
Starbucks.
Which that makes sense. I mean, if you're going to have to stop for a half an hour, it'd be nice to be at a place where you can go hang out and get a drink and get a snack as well.
I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking my interaction with Starbucks these days is ordering ahead, walking in, talking to no one, grabbing my drink and leaving. So I'm for me, I feel like this would hold up that process a little bit. But yeah, I'm sure if I was on a long road trip, I'd want to take a break and sip my coffee slowly.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of look at it this way, like as an EV owner, like 9 times out of 10, like you're charging up at home overnight,
Right.
or maybe if you live in the city, maybe in the garage at your apartment, or maybe it's street charging, but you're really only charging when you're on the road. So if I'm on a road trip, okay, maybe Starbucks isn't the best example because they don't have your sweets that you like, but Flying J has all the junk food for me and all the sweets for you, so that would be perfect.
It would be perfect. Yeah, I agree. So where else are they doing these? Is it just Starbucks? I know we supply Starbucks. Are there any other ones?
The other big one that was announced was Kroger. They're going to do 350 stations in 20 states. There's a handful of other grocery stores that have announced as well, but nothing as ambitious as Kroger.
Right. I think that is where I would put a charging station personally. It would be at a grocery store. I could spend 45 minutes to an hour and get maybe a 80% charge, like you said, from that. So that makes perfect sense to me. I would think that they would all be rushing to adopt that model.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the big hurdle is the cost. But with all this federal funding, maybe we get over that hurdle. I mean, the biggest hurdle, for the EV owner is this fear of not being able to charge up and this range anxiety.
Right.
If you can charge up fast and you've got chargers everywhere, that overcomes that. So, Ebere, we talked about a lot of stuff here. What's your opinion, given the facts that we have here? How much are EVs really going to affect retail in the end? And who knows, like, okay, let's say, what did GM say? They're going to go fully electric by 2035. So let's say, what will it be like in 2035, do you think?
In 2034, in 2032, GM is going to say, just kidding. We're going to need it until 2050. So we can get all this together, right? And I can't help but think of that 5.6% number, right? We're talking about a very small subset of overall. I mean, something that crosses my mind when I drive every day is how many cars are on the road, right? Just in general. And I feel like that's a common concern that I hear from people in other cities, right? Atlanta, California, the traffic is so crazy, so to think that only 5% of those cars I see are electric vehicles, it kind of makes me, I can't help but compare it to the way that we talk about like e-commerce, right? And how I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago, prior to the diligent work of retail researchers such as ourselves, the e-commerce section of overall sales was maybe being, I don't want to say overblown, but it definitely, the picture being painted wasn't totally accurate, right? We were talking about at that time maybe less than 10% of overall sales, but we were speaking about it as though every single retail transaction was happening online. So in the end, how much will EVs affect retail? I definitely think they're going to have an impact, right? Especially because of the environmental component. It's something that we can't ignore as a country, and I think that this new bill that was just passed reinforces that. So it's definitely going to be something that we see. I think it'll take, I don't know what it's going to take to get people to adopt electric vehicles en masse, even with gas prices as high as they are, we're still taking road trips, we're still going around, we're still buying fully gas cars, so in the end, it's going to take a lot to, shift the consumer preferences to electric vehicles. And I hope that it's something that we can get to gradually but quickly, and that it won't take like a, a disastrous event, like a climate disaster for us to be like, oh my God, we all need to hit electric cars. So I really hope it'll be a gradual shift that takes, maybe 15 to 20 years. But again, I can very much see GM walking back that very ambitious. I like the ambition, but I feel like they're going to walk that back in 10 years or so.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was a little nervous about those goals until the news just today. I guess it was yesterday we found out that Joe Manchin was going to support this new bill, which
Right.
means that there's going to be a whole lot of funding. It may very well happen. I can say this: there will be in 10 years. There's going to be a lot more people that that own electric cars, and they're not going to be wealthy people with Teslas. They're going to be
Right.
sedans and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
I think for me the biggest question mark is gas stations. Do they transition to charging stations? You don't need. What you need is a lot of electricity. That's something we haven't even gotten into. Is
Right.
These new level 3 chargers require a ton of electricity, so you can't just throw them anywhere. I'm not an expert on this at all, but from what I've read, there's a lot of infrastructure that just has to go into that. So anyway, lots remains to be seen. Let's see if we've got any comments from our viewers. We do. Let's see here. Taylor was thrilled to hear about Rivian. Loves to hear her name dropped. Okay. What's this? My name is Joe. I work for Fourth, a nonprofit committed to advancing clean and equitable transportation. I lead a DOE fund program focused on workplace charging. Given that 10% of U.S. employees work in retail, do you see an opportunity for commercial real estate firms to influence and accelerate EV adoption? Yes, absolutely. I think that understanding EVs and chargers and how they work, because our firm manages offices, shopping centers, industrial buildings.
Right.
We lease them out. We help people buy and sell them. And if we are sort of promoting this as for retail as an amenity, as office as an amenity,
Right.
but are knowledgeable about it, I think we've got a good chance of helping that along.
Totally agree.
Let's see. Thanks for the show. Interesting topic.
You're welcome.
Kevin Campbell says, thanks to JLL, we provided Electrify America's initial 100 locations.
Let's go. We love a JLL deal. We love an exclusive.
That's awesome. Yeah. What I love too is, for viewers that aren't familiar with our company that we work for, JLL, it's really big and we're a very small part of it. So I'm always hearing about, okay, we did Electrify America. Okay, awesome. Are there links to read up on these projects? Looking for case studies associated with workplace charging. That's a great question. All of my research is focused on retail. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I can send you details on everything that we talked about today. James Cook on LinkedIn. I don't have a whole list of case studies other than that, but I'm sure they're out there. One other question, the 89% stat, who's that from? Yeah, that was not from JLL. That is a consumer survey that was quoted in a research paper I just read that I don't have in front of me. But again, LinkedIn user, if you connect with me, connect with James Cook at JLL on LinkedIn and ask me about that 89% stat, I will send you a link to the report that I pulled it from. So Ebere, this has been quite a conversation. I feel like I've learned a lot. I want to check out that charging station the Westfield mall in San Jose. That looks awesome.
Absolutely.
So for all of our viewers out there, you can download our latest research reports. The the latest one is back to school. You talked with Keisha about last week. Lots more. Go to jll.com, go to the Trends and Insights section. We write about all kinds of stuff. Next episode of Where We Buy is our audio podcast, and it's dropping this week. I just recorded one yesterday with my friend Meredith Darnell, who's the Chief Optimization Officer at Brookfield Retail. So any idea what a Chief Optimization Officer does, Ebere?
No, but I'm going to listen to the interview and find out, I hope.
Yeah. That's what I'm going to say. Subscribe to Where We Buy on whatever podcast app you listen to, and you'll know that new episode is going to come out next week.
Absolutely. And also, if you like this show that you're watching, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube and make sure you click on the little bell icons so that you get a notification every time a new show comes out. Alternatively, you could follow the JLL Retail page on LinkedIn.
Yep, and we're going to be back next week. We do new episodes every Thursday, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 Eastern. Easiest way to find us is to go subscribe on YouTube at everythingweknow.show. So, Ebere, what did we learn about retail today?
James, I learned that electric vehicle sales went up by 66% this year.
And I learned that I'm going to need to drive my car over to Westfield Valley Fair to charge it up at an awesome new charging station that looks so cool. And if you want to know more about everything we know about retail, you too can join us here next week.